r/askreddit. Historians of Reddit, what are some R-rated facts that are often left out of history classes? Sir Isaac Newton and Nikola Tesla died virgins. Man, if Newton was still alive he'd get so much hot physicist pussy nowadays. Would you bang Isaac Newton? I know I would. In his book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Stephen Hawking suggests Newton really wasn't interested in the ladies, that he preferred the company of men. Okay, gay, he thought he was gay. But Tesla was pretty good looking. That millions more Chinese people died cruelly at the hands of the Japanese than Jewish people died at the hands of the Germans, but it seems that our history books sort of left that out. I think the difference was the intent. Correct me if I'm wrong, but while what the Japanese did in China was incredibly awful, the Japanese intent wasn't to eradicate every Chinese person. That was the Nazi Party's goal, eliminate all the Jews of Europe, which made up a majority of Jews worldwide. And they did a good job at it. Edit. As I said in other comments that I don't think either is more horrible. They are both absolutely deplorable crimes, and it upsets me that some people have suggested I'm trying to say one is worse than the other, because that's absolutely not the case. My point was that I felt that the Holocaust gets emphasized because it's portrayed as a systematic mass extermination as opposed to a mass orgy of violence. You college frat guy made the point that mass violence during war has a precedent. Cities have been sacked since antiquity. Genghis Khan killed an insane amount of people, et al. But the Holocaust stood basically unparalleled in terms of organized mass genocide. That was the point I was trying to make. Neither one is better than the other. And if someone has alternative theories as to why one gets taught more than the other, then I'm all ears. Barring the whole the Jews run everything !11 stuff. Usinris made a very valid point that Western soldiers saw the results of the Holocaust with their own eyes, which is a completely logical reason. I don't think there's any one reason as to why one gets focused on more than the other. Catherine the Great of Russia hired a servant who would pick out the good looking guys at parties, test them out on sexual performance to see if they were fit for the queen, and also check for STD, because Catherine was a dirty whore, but still great. That's just plain smart. No wonder she managed to keep everybody in check for so long. This makes playing as her in Civ 5 so much more entertaining. Boston Corbett, the guy who killed John Wilkes Booth, castrated himself with a pair of scissors to avoid the temptation of prostitutes. Then he ate dinner and went to church before seeing a doctor. He was a hatter and they think the mercury involved caused his mental issues. How the hell do you castrate yourself? If I accidentally hit my balls, I just lie on the floor in a fetal position for a while. Edit. Found this so it had to be placed here. The Russian army raped their way through Germany to Berlin, resulting in mass abortions after the war. The war in the East in general, World War II, which is outlined pretty well in Dan Carlin's hardcore history podcast series Ghosts of the Ostfront. It's one of the largest episodes of rape in history. Russians guarded such a hate towards the Germans and there were no German men behind the lines to protect their women. I didn't learn this until a Russian history college course. I think 60 Minutes did a story on it in fact. The Russians even raped some of their own female soldiers they found in POW camps. One woman reported them to their commander and he raped her. Charles Guiteau, the man who assassinated President Garfield, was once part of the utopian Oneida community. This community had a strong sexual core and actively practiced communalism, complex marriages, and the majority of the population was getting laid, a lot. That is everybody except Charles Guiteau. Guiteau was such an oddity that even the women of this hypersexualized population wanted nothing to do with him, gaining him the nickname Charles Jitout. Ben Franklin used to like to take wind baths. As in getting naked, climbing up on a hill somewhere and just standing there naked. That actually sounds really awesome. Christopher Columbus cut the hands off of children if they didn't bring him enough gold. It was one of the main reasons he wasn't elected to be a saint. The Native American Catholics were all like, whoa, hold up a minute. If you have any objections to Columbus as a saint, raise your hands. No one? Edit. Wow, gold? Guess someone gets to keep their hands. The role that alcohol played in almost all of history. Johnny Appleseed wasn't planting apples for pies. I took drugs throughout history my freshman year of college, one of the coolest classes I've ever had. Biggest thing I remember from it was that rum was a big factor in starting the American Revolution. Basically the colonies really fucking pissed that Britain made it hard to buy rum from the Caribbean, and it helped lead to the first of many American championships. I was reading today about how wood alcohol deaths went up after Prohibition took effect. Sad. Thomas Jefferson's relationship with his teen slave mistress and their 6 children. I actually know 2 people descended from them. They were both offered free rides to the University of Virginia. I just found out a few weeks ago that the slave mistress was his own wife's half-sister. I had never heard that part before. That Ben Franklin was a total man whore. High school US history teacher told us all about how he had women in every city. From Philly to Boston to Paris. Who's fact checking this shit? There's some weird shit on here. Vibrators were invented from doctors masturbating their patients in order to cure female hysteria. Just think of what those doctors had to go through, making house calls, going from house to house masturbating one woman after another, masturbating women all day long, every day. Typing rebellion. It was a Chinese civil war that happened during ours that killed more than 20 million people. And the guy who led the rebellion claimed he was Jesus' baby Chinese brother. Regarding the Romans, since I saw them earlier in this post, homosexuality at the time wasn't really that accepted if you were the bottom, since you had the qualities of a woman, so to say. If you essentially had the body of the athletic, strong, and rugged hairy man, you would be in total control. While if you were effeminate, you were basically screwed. Edit. Figures this is the comment that takes away my gold virginity. So how do I use this gold thingy? Replace Romans with a gay community in Dallas and the phrase remains factual. Ancient Rome was literally covered in dicks. They sculpted them everywhere. Dicks lining the roads, dicks on the side of the house, dicks on the ceiling. Literally everywhere. Edit. Caesar. Can you literally cover my palace in dicks? No homo, but please. Put them everywhere. Jupiter, damn it. Who forgot to plaster this wall with dicks? Medieval monks commonly wrote homoerotic poetry that they would pass around while copying texts. They'd also doodle in the margins of those texts. It's funny how human nature doesn't really change. Phryne was once the richest woman in the world. She was an ancient Greek hooker. That's right, the Greeks had sex with women too. Green yellow women. That's the other thing. Phryne is ancient Greek for frog. Apparently she had a very odd complexion, making her green yellow, and everybody wants to bone a green yellow lady. After a while, she was so rich, she offered to pay to rebuild the walls of Thebes, provided they installed a plaque that read, "Destroyed by Alexander, restored by Phryne the courtesan." The Thebans turned her down. As was the style in those days, Phryne eventually got taken to court for impiety, a capital offense. If you lose a trial in ancient Greece for a capital offense, they make you drink hemlock, deadly poison. Her trial wasn't going well. She was pretty impious after all, but she had an ace up her sleeve. Well, it was definitely somewhere in her shirt. Phryne ripped off her robe and bore her breasts to the jury. The jury was so moved by those green yellow titties, they declared that she was a prophet of Aphrodite and acquitted her. For the Redditors who are too young to remember, O.J. Simpson used the same tactic. Syphilis was native to the Native Americans. When the explorers got over there, they contracted syphilis and spread it to Europe. It became widespread and pox made it very visible. Even Pope had syphilis pox. I would totally buy that there was a Pope syphilis IV if I didn't know any better. When nuns in abbeys and monasteries would hear that there were Vikings coming to raid the place, they would often disfigure themselves so that they would not be appealing for rape. For these women, dying a virgin was of utmost importance, and their marriage to Christ in heaven depended on it. They usually accomplished this by cutting off their noses and or upper lips so that they would be hideous. This is also the supposed origin to the phrase cutting off the nose to spite the face. Edit. Spelling. The Eastern Front in World War II was almost too bloody for people to realize. The Soviet Union lost around 20 million people in the war compared to Britain, France and US, who lost less at 2 million combined. At Stalingrad alone, Russia lost more men than Britain did in the entire war. Also, Winston Churchill was a massive racist that believed in eugenics and sterilization of degenerates, that civilizing the black people of Africa was the white man's burden. He also wanted Indians gassed and called the USSR a conspiracy by the international jury. Churchill was also a philanderer, raging alcoholic, and opium addict. But he had a non-threatening appearance and a way with words, so all is forgiven in the history books. Rasputin was huge. And I ain't talking about his stature. That's a well-known fallacy. That pickled penis in a jar that you're referring to was never proven to be his, I believe. Rah Rasputin, lover of the Russian queen. Newt Gingrich, Speaker of the House, was having sex with an intern while impeaching Clinton for having sex with an intern. Let's get our chain of events clear here. Married to wife number 1. Cheats on her with wife number 2 while she is diagnosed with cancer and during its treatment. While wife number 1 is recovering in hospital from surgery to remove the cancer, he serves her with divorce papers. Then, while going after Clinton, he cheats on wife number 2 with his intern, eventual wife number 3, then divorces wife number 2 after she is diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. But there's a reason why he did all these things, you understand. It's because he loves his country too much. There's no question at times of my life, partially driven by how passionately I felt about this country, that I worked far too hard and things happened in my life that were not appropriate. Didn't Muhammad marry and have intercourse with a prepubescent girl? She was 6, I believe. To put it super simply, it's one of the problems Islam faces. If they say that marrying young children is wrong, then they are stating that their prophet was wrong, which forces them to question their whole religion. On the 20th of April, 1914, on the orders of the governor of Colorado, National Guard troopers and private security men attacked the tent camp of striking miners in Ludlow, Colorado with machine guns and rifles. 19 people, including women and children, were killed. The leader of the camp, Louis Tickus, was captured and then executed, and then his body and the bodies of 2 of his men who had also been captured alive were dumped next to a nearby railroad embankment, where they remained on the orders of the National Guard troopers for 3 days before being buried. Neither the governor nor any of the chief officers were ever charged with a crime. 22 National Guardsmen were charged for their actions, but all were acquitted. The man who executed Tickus, a lieutenant and the only officer charged, was found guilty of assault. He received a reprimand. Oh god, our bad history needs to open another bottle. It's the bi-monthly Reddit Historians Teach Me History thread. Ain't no one reading this shit sober. Genghis Khan's definition of supreme joy was apparently to cut my enemies to pieces, drive them before me, seize their possessions, witness the tears of those dear to them, and embrace their wives and daughters. Approximately 16 million men in Central Asia carry his Y chromosome, and up to 0.5% of the world population might be descended from him. Summary: Genghis Khan had more sex than you will. Had more rape is what you mean. That the ancient Greeks grabbed each other's balls as a greeting. Peter the Great once rode through Moscow in a sleigh drawn by 12 naked, bald men accompanied by a coterie of people parodying the Catholic Church, including a prince pope seated on a beer barrel throne, blessing passers-by with vodka, holy water and a pair of Dutch pipes. They would go to the houses of nobles and sing Christmas carols, demanding a donation for their valuable time. If the nobles refused to donate, Peter would be sure the taxmen paid them a visit the next day. I guess that's really more PG-13, but it's still fucking hilarious that the ruler of a nation did the equivalent of running around smashing people's mailboxes with a baseball bat. Everyone in history had sex, except for the Vestal Virgins, and the ugly nuns. And Tesla. Lincoln loved the whores. Nat Turner's execution. He was a slave that led a rebellion in early America. Then he was caught, his scrotum removed, and was turned into a coin purse. I believe he was skinned alive, along with other horrible things, but I only remember the scrotum thing the most clearly since it was definitely the weirdest part. In Sparta, it was common for men to have sex with boys other men. Not so much R, but maybe PG. Johnny Appleseed was celebrated because his trees allowed people on the frontier to make hard apple cider and applejack. Not apples for eating, these come from trees cultivated from cuttings rather than from seed.